being clocked like that was weird, for the record. Like, it was something I had only recently even thought about, and I was not ready for that. Hi, I'm Kate, and welcome to Always Tuck and Roll, where we discuss life, the universe, autism, and anything else that comes out of my head, because, let's be honest, could be anything. Variety is the spice of life, and that is the only way I'm gonna get spice. At all. Anyway, I thought today that we would talk about autism because, autistic, but also it's April somehow, and April is Autism Acceptance Month. Now, it did used to go by Autism Awareness Month, and while there's nothing wrong with awareness, awareness does treat autism like a disease and not a disorder. It implies that we need to be aware and for the cure! But this doesn't have a cure. This has a, lifetime of struggle bust through acceptance, but here we are. I mean, it's not that bleak, except for when it is, unfortunately. But acceptance is about inclusion and understanding, and it promotes, celebration of neurodivergence. So, happy Autism Acceptance Month. And I figured now would be a good time to discuss my autistic journey, because I've peppered in pieces here and there. I've done a quick crash course, but let's see if I can succinctly do anything realistically. I'm not succinct, but no. Let's see if I can tell you how I got here. I knew I was different maybe than other people, but I didn't quite get that. I didn't want to be noticeably different. And in a small town, you either stick out or you blend in. So I blended in. I was able to fly under the radar in lots of ways. In the first grade, it did take me a while to learn to read. And we're talking I was in first grade from 91 to 92, so you didn't need to know how to read before first grade. You learned to read in the first grade. And it took me a hot minute, but once I could read just as well, if not better, than anyone else in my class. So, but the end of that school year, my teachers were like, we think maybe she should go to readiness, do first grade again. And my parents were like, can she do the work? And they were like, yeah, we just think she's emotionally young. And they're like, send her to second grade. She's gonna get bored if she can do the work. So on to second grade it went. Socially, that is where I always noticed the issues, realistically. There were other things, every time I changed, I leveled up in school. That was hard. Going from elementary school to middle school was hard. Middle school to high school was harder. High school to college was not actually comparable because they are wildly different experiences for me personally. Middle school is when I really started to notice the differences, because it wasn't just the kids I insularly, is that even a word? We're gonna go with it, grew up with. We now had 3 other towns playing with us, and one of them we'd only ever played rec soccer against, so, rivals. You gotta work that out pretty quickly. But so, I did the best I could. I observed my peers. I tried to do what they did and dress the way that they did. Not because I wanted to belong, but because I didn't want to look like I didn't belong. I didn't want to not blend in. Because when you blend in, people don't ask you questions. And when people don't ask you questions, you can't answer them poorly and get found out for being weird or whatever. So, but it's not like it worked all the time. In the 3rd grade, I had a bunch of girls in my class come up to me and say they wouldn't play with me until my best friend got back from vacation because they only played with me because of her. In 7th grade, I got dumped by my long-term boyfriend I'd been technically dating since the 5th grade, but realistically since the 1st grade, because some other girl told him to on a field trip. And whatever, that was a safety relationship that was only 5th through 7th grade, but if you ask anyone that was in that middle school, it was 1st grade through 8th grade, apparently. Wish him the best. Here he's engaged again. Props. But, there are always like little things. Like when my main social groups in middle school merged into one once we got to high school, because then it was suddenly 9 towns together. Our middle school rivals were now our classmates, and that was big for all of us. My 2 closest female friends iced me out of groups. They also kept swapping boyfriends, and I didn't quite understand that either, but yeah, they abandoned me on my birthday freshman year of high school during group work. So I had to go meet other people on my birthday, which is only 6 weeks into a school year and is kind of terrible to learn that way and or to have to meet people that quickly. And also, then they got mad that I started dating someone that I met there because they didn't particularly care for him or his friends. And, oh, well, you shouldn't have ditched me on my birthday, which is actually what I said to them. But by the end of that school year, I was done with that entire group. Everyone I'd been friends with since, 1st grade, I could not put up with their nonsense anymore. So I started finding other friends. I started hanging out with a friend of mine and all of his friends because they were my age and we had stuff in common. Though I would later find out that we weren't actually friends, the vast majority of me and those guys, because I thought we were just friends. I thought I was one of the guys. I hope I wasn't a pick-me. I'm a little bit afraid that I was, but it turned out they all wanted something from me, and I still feel a little bit betrayed by that, I'll be perfectly honest, because I thought we were friends. And then, high school gets ready to end, and bam, you're supposed to, pick a college. Well, okay. Trade school, college, AmeriCorps, job, military, and actually it was 2003, so a lot of my class was going right into the military. I did not. I was raised by a vet who informed me in no uncertain terms I probably would not do well in the military, and fair. However, when it came time to graduate high school, we were told you go to college, you get a job, or you join the military. I think it was actually Navy for us because we are a Navy family. But anyway. Obviously, and then it was, if you don't want to grow up yet, go to college. So, I went to college. I went to the one school that did not give me a scholarship, but the one school that I did a tour at, and that tour was just, I knew that that's where I wanted to be for 4 years. I didn't declare a major yet. I just, the end of my freshman year, I finally declared one, and then I declared a second my junior year, and now I have a dual BA. Go me. But college, that was really the first time I was truly on my own, because even though I did occasionally hang out with people that I grew up with there, I was largely on my own to try and figure all this out by myself, and that was good and bad. I can do really, really well by myself for a period of time, and then I just can't maintain anymore. College specifically, the first real inkling that, I was maybe not normal, or whatever that means, is the end of my freshman year when they were like, hey, so you gotta pick your rooming assignments for next year. And both of my roommates were moving off campus. Different apartments, they didn't really get along that well. And so I was just kind of on my own. And so I had met people that I didn't hate, but I didn't really, the idea of going up to someone I only kind of knew and like, hey, do you want to live together? That was a bridge way too far. So finally, I filled out my paperwork and went to the office and was like, I want my dorm room back. Whoever you want to put in there next year, go for it. But I want my room back. And I mean, it made the most sense to me at the time. And for context, like, I knew where my bed and my dresser were going to be. I knew where everything in that building was. I knew how it all worked. I knew how to get everywhere I needed to go from my, home base. And that's important to me because, like, I was someone who, like, my sister loved to rearrange our bedroom when we were teens. My bed and my dresser could not move. I to this day, not super comfortable with it. So the idea of not being able to figure out who I wanted to live with, but knowing that I could keep my room, oh yeah, I held on to that. And that was probably the only reason I was able to argue with this woman over the counter when she's like, you have to find someone. And I was like, no, I don't. Just let me have my room, please. Subsequent years, I had it figured out. But freshman year, I didn't know what to do. So senior year was when my roommate was finally like, hey, has anyone ever asked if you're autistic? And I was like, no one has ever said that. And my college boyfriend was visiting, and he read the description, was like, oh no, you are definitely in this textbook. So I read it and was like, oh yeah, this sounds painfully familiar. And for the context, we're sitting around in 2007. The DSM-5, where autism spectrum disorder lives, and when that definition was changed from autism and Asperger's and combined into the spectrum disorder and all that stuff, that didn't even come out until 2013. So we are still 6 years before formal announcements and publications at this point. But I was in this textbook. So that was interesting. But then a few months later, I went on a field trip with my sister and her college roommate and the college roommate's grandmother. We'll just call her grandmother. Now, grandmother worked at a different college in Massachusetts than my sister and her roommate were at, but she was a foremost expert on autism, of all things, and early childhood development. So I drove down, we met, we chatted in the parking lot, rode the train to Boston, and when we got off the train, we kind of separated and, did our own little things. We all went to the Body Worlds exhibit at the Science Museum, but then, like, the college field trip had their own agenda, and we had our own just exploring Boston agenda. So then my sister and her roommate were, like, laughing, and I was like, what's so funny? And they're like, grandmother wants to know why we never said you were autistic. And I was like, 'cause I'm not. And they were like, she's pretty sure you are. And I was like, oh, I guess maybe I am. Being clocked like that was weird, for the record. Like, it was something I had only recently even thought about, and I was not ready for that. So I just kind of laughed it off like I had the whole original conversation and moved on. But then senior year ended. And so did the life plan. The life plan that I had been assigned at birth. You go to school. You keep going to school. Then you go to college. No one ever told me what I was supposed to do after that. Like, and I still don't know what I'm supposed to do. I mean, I understand, like, you're supposed to get a job and relationships and marriage and the life things, but what am I supposed to do? I don't know. So, and I had been working on and off for all this. Like, I had a job when I was 13 to 17 working as a cashier in my small town grocery store. And I was a library shelver for references and periodicals and general circulation in college. So I worked, but I didn't know what I wanted to do or be or live where or how to do any of it. So I latched on to my college boyfriend, who was going to Philadelphia for his doctoral candidacy, and I hopped on board that adventure for 14 months. I should never live in a major city. That is what I learned. And there was, a lot of learning and growth and all of that, but, it didn't go well. I had a job for like 12 hours, and I was supposed to knock on the door asking for money for PennPIRG, or Penn Environment, which is part of PennPIRG. PIRG stands for Public Interest Research Group, by the way. I made $20 and they were like, "This is not the job for you." And I was like, "No shit." So wasn't really too upset about losing that job. They didn't even pay me. And the amount of times I heard, "I don't believe in global warming, but it's unseasonably hot. Would you like some water?" Make it make sense. Make it make sense. 14 months of that nonsense, and my mom finally convinced me to come home. She and my dad, who U-hauled me down, just hauled me back. Whatever I could fit in their car, that's what I took. I thought I was having a nervous breakdown, and I wasn't. I was having autistic burnout, because I had crammed so much into myself in college and then gone through so many changes living in Philadelphia that, plus, it was 2008, and I hope that the world now doesn't get back to where 2008 was, because that was not a great time for anyone. Thank you, recession. So, from there, I took some time to myself, living with my parents, no responsibilities other than, keeping the house clean. And I ended up joining AmeriCorps Vista, so Volunteers in Service to America. And I moved to West Virginia for what was supposed to be 1 year. And then after my 1-year service term was up, they were like, "We don't know what we're going to do without you." And I was like freaking out internally, because I was like, I need to find a job. And I was like, "Well, if you pay me, I'll stay." And they were like, "Really?" And I stayed in West Virginia for 4 more years, because I didn't know what else to do. And I didn't hate it there, but it did get much harder. And by the time I left, I had 10 jobs in one, and I wasn't even making 30 grand a year, and I was working 70 hours a week. And I was miserable, absolutely miserable. And there were lots of problematic moments in that era of my life. So I came back in full autistic burnout, and for almost a full year, I couldn't do anything. I did farmers markets with my sister from time to time, where I was socially awkward, but, at least, trying to figure out who I still was, because I didn't know anymore. And then I became a ski instructor and high ropes adventure guide. And then that was really, really great for my self-esteem and rebuilding everything I felt like I had lost. And I also worked as a part-time secretary, and, I just cobbled a bunch of jobs together to try and make a living while living with my parents and having a long-distance relationship. And then I moved in with some of my coworkers to make it work, and it was all good except for the parts that weren't. And I was frustrated with all of my jobs. I had yet again was finding myself burned out in all of my jobs, and one of my jobs also dealt with a healthy dose of sexual harassment. Fun. So I decided to just move with Pete to a different state where the minimum wage was much higher, so hopefully I would only have to work one job. And work one job I did. But having worked for abusive bosses before, I was able to realize how quickly that this was not a good place, and I left her 4.5 months in. And then I took like 5 months to try and come down from like what had just happened and the move and all the changes and everything. And then I started temping. And when I got with the temp agency, by then I knew myself pretty good. I was like, I do not want a phone job and I do not want to work in the city. And a week later, I was working a phone job in the city. And a week after that, I was taking the train in because I was tired of having the daily panic attacks. One in, one out. Every day. For that first week I temped. And I'm so glad for those 2 coworkers that, not my supervisor, he left me to rot. Useless supervisor. So then I found myself working in this bureau that was there to help individuals with disabilities find and maintain employment, which is all well and good. But once I got hired there full time and got really good insurance, I was able to get therapy. And then therapy led to a referral to a psychologist. And that led to a really, really long wait list for diagnostic testing. And then finally I got tested for autism. And 4 months after that, I got the diagnosis. And 8 days after that, I turned 38. Disclosing is up to the individual. I chose to disclose. I was working with experts that were experts in working with people with autism and other disabilities. You know what I found out? And I didn't pick up on it at first. I mean, I felt like people had started to treat me a little differently. But, the ableism in vocational rehabilitation is staggering. Staggering. Who knew? I mean, I was warned, but I didn't understand the warnings. And it's been about a year, and I'm beginning to understand what they meant. So when everything came to a head last Administrative Professionals Day, which is April 24th. So they got me during Autism Awareness Month. Wow, here we are again. Full circle. Autism Acceptance Month. They were aware, but they were not accepting. On Administrative Professionals Day, of which I was the only full-time secretary that knew anything at that point in time, that's when they decided to vilify me, twist my words, put me in a scary last-minute meeting that they knew that I had trauma related to. And then I hear that they were shocked when I suddenly went on FMLA because my therapist had finally been like, you have autistic burnout. What they did was wrong. Let's take a timeout. I took 5 weeks off immediately, burned all of my PTO. Part of me knew that I was never going back. Then and there. The rest of me wasn't sure. And then I couldn't go back. And I did what I had to do to get out, but man, it was hard. And since then, so since April 24th, 2024, and here we are, I'm filming this April 1st, 2025, I have learned so much more about myself, about listening to myself in a way that, like, actually listening intelligently to myself. It's one thing to know that, like, oh yeah, I should always wear sunglasses when I'm outside. No, I need to wear sunglasses because it helps with my sensory issues. And if I throw a hat on, it helps focus and helps with sensory issues too. And let myself talk with my hand, listening to what my internal needs are and adapting my life for those. I was never given the opportunity to do that. And being diagnosed with autism at 38 was the most validating and overwhelming experience of my entire life, and I am still picking the pieces up because it's a lifetime of figuring this out. And I still don't know what it is that I'm gonna do next. Maybe it'll be this, maybe it'll be something else. I don't know. But what I do know is that it has been a crazy ride. I've missed some really important stuff, but I've been trying to record this for 3 hours, and my phone is dying. So this is what I got. This is most of my journey, and I'm so glad that you're here experiencing this part of the journey with me, because you know what? Of the whole shebang, this self-discovery, this trying to make a video every week, that has been some of the most rewarding part of this whole messy craziness of it all. So thank you guys so much for allowing me to have this journey and to continue with it, and for riding shotgun when you so choose. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care of yourself. Check in with yourself. Accept yourself. And when all else fails, don't forget to tuck and roll.